What if the greatest footballer of his generation was already here?
Nicked away by Fermin, and he slid it through to Lamine Yamal as just the opener.
And one of the greatest footballers of all time saw it before the rest of us.
Well, this kid has been doing things really well. Leave him alone because he's got plenty of talent. Enjoy a talent like this for many years, and that's what I hope.
Not a prediction, a warning. In June 2025, Cristiano Ronaldo, 40 years old, 5 Ballon d'Ors, the highest goal scorer the game has ever seen, walked into a press room and said something that didn't sound like praise.
Carrera, Bellingham, Lamine now, this young generation, Vinicius, that they do a fantastic job. And
he looked into the cameras and said, "The kid is special." And here's the part that made the football world pause. Ronaldo doesn't get impressed easily. He doesn't speak in hype. So when he said it, the real question became, what does he know that we don't? Because this isn't just the story of a talented teenager. This is the story of Lamine Yamal. A boy photographed with Messi as a baby, a Masia graduate who didn't just survive Barcelona's pressure, he accelerated through it. By 16, he wasn't a promise, he was a European champion. At Euro 2024, he led the tournament in assists, led it in dribbles, scored a semi-final goal against France that froze an entire continent, and became the youngest player in history to play and win a European Championship final. UEFA didn't call him promising, they called him the best young player at the tournament, and the numbers agreed. Barcelona handed him the number 10, threw him into El Clásicos, and he delivered. This season, 13 La Liga goals, 9 assists, 3 goals and 3 assists in Europe, a title race carried on teenage shoulders, and a first senior hat-trick in a must-win match at 18. And here's the terrifying part, he hasn't even entered his prime. So what happens when the body gets stronger, when the Champions League nights get bigger, when a World Cup arrives and Spain hand him the responsibility? Maybe that's what Ronaldo saw. This is how Ronaldo warned us and how Lamine Yamal is proving him right.
Here's the thing about Cristiano Ronaldo. When he speaks about another footballer, the world listens. And usually it goes one of two ways. Either he's brushing someone off, or he's quietly making it about himself. So when Ronaldo sat down ahead of the Portugal versus Spain Nations League final and started talking about Lamine Yamal, everyone expected the usual. The veteran sizing up the young gun, the back in my day energy, maybe a little dig wrapped in a compliment. That's not what happened. What happened was something much more interesting. Ronaldo protected him. Think about the setup for a second. The media had already written the headline in their heads, 40-year-old legend versus teenage prodigy, the old king versus the new one, pass the torch. It was irresistible, and every journalist in that room was ready to run with it, and Ronaldo just killed it, quietly, deliberately. He called Yamal a kid, not in a dismissive way, but in the way an older brother would. He said the kid had been doing really well. He said let him grow. He said don't put him under pressure. And then he added this line that stuck with me, for the good of football. That's not PR talk. That's not something you say when you're trying to sound humble for the cameras. That's a man who's been inside the biggest spotlight in football since he was a teenager himself, sitting there and saying, I know what this does to a person. I've seen it. Please ease off him. He wasn't just protecting Yamal's talent, he was protecting his timeline. He was telling the hype machine, not yet, let him breathe. Now, here's where it gets interesting, because while Ronaldo was out there asking the world to slow down, Lamine Yamal was making that almost impossible to do. Let's actually talk about this kid properly, because the numbers are kind of ridiculous. At Euro 2024, Yamal didn't just show up, he shaped the tournament. 4 assists, goal of the tournament against France, that curling, impossible strike that made grown men stop mid-sentence, youngest ever to play and win a European Championship final, young player of the tournament. He was 16 years old. Back at Barcelona, the club didn't treat him like a promising youngster they were nurturing quietly in the background. They gave him the number 10 shirt, they extended his contract to 2031. When a club gives a teenager the number 10, they're not saying, "We believe in your future." They're saying, "You are the present." And this season, he's backed that up in a way that's hard to explain without just reading the numbers out loud. 13 goals and 9 assists in La Liga, 3 goals and 3 assists in the Champions League, and then, just recently, a hat-trick against Villarreal in a title race match, the first hat-trick of his career at 18 years old, in a game that mattered. That's not potential anymore, that's production. That's a player who shows up when the pressure is highest and delivers anyway. So here's the thing Ronaldo was really saying when you strip it all back. He wasn't just saying he's talented, he was saying something more specific. He's good enough that the world is going to crown him before he's done growing, and that's exactly when things get dangerous. Ronaldo knows what that looks like. He's lived it. The moment you go from exciting prospect to the next big thing to why hasn't he won the Ballon d'Or yet, that transition happens fast, and it rarely gives you time to prepare. The headlines didn't soften, the comparisons didn't stop, the expectations kept climbing. And Yamal, to his credit, just kept playing football. But Ronaldo saw something the rest of us were only just starting to notice. The question is, what exactly did he see?
Here's what football always does when a teenager looks too comfortable on the biggest stage. It starts with a clip, a nutmeg, a travailer, some poor fullback sitting on the brass wondering what just happened. The clip goes viral, the comment section explodes, and suddenly the conversation shifts. It stops being "this kid is really good" and becomes something else entirely. Who does he remind you of? And with Lamine Yamal, the names come flying out fast. Messi, Neymar, and then more quietly, a comparison people don't quite say out loud enough, a young Cristiano Ronaldo. Not the machine, not the brand, not the guy who scores 40 goals a season with his eyes closed. The kid at Manchester United who played like football was a street fight and absolutely loved every second of it. Let's go through all three, because each one tells you something different about who Lamine Yamal actually is. This is the obvious one, and honestly it makes sense on the surface. Same club, same academy, left foot, right wing, that uncanny ability to manipulate tight spaces, to slow defenders down before bursting past them, to drag people out of position with just a touch and a glance. And the origin story feels familiar too. Messi made his competitive Barcelona debut at 17, scored his first official goal at 17, and was gradually introduced to the world as this quiet, inevitable genius unfolding in front of everyone. So when people see a teenage Barca winger doing adult things, they reach for the same story. It's instinctive. But here's where it gets interesting. Messi at 17 was being introduced, carefully, gradually. The club was protecting him, giving him space to find his feet at the top level. Yamal at 16 and 17 was already being asked to decide games. Not "come on and enjoy yourself," more like "we need you to solve this." That's a completely different kind of pressure, and the fact that he absorbed it without blinking tells you something important. Messi's teenage story was about inevitability building slowly, like a wave gathering force before it hits. Yamal's teenage story is about impact arriving early, before anyone really asked for it, before anyone was ready. Same position, different arrival. Now, this one is about feeling, because Neymar wasn't just a footballer, he was a whole mood on the pitch. Flair with purpose, quick hips, that improvisational streak that made you feel like he was playing a slightly different, more fun version of the game than everyone else. And crucially, that confidence to try something ridiculous even when the safe pass was right there, wide open, begging to be taken. Yamal has that same "I'm here to create" energy. You can see it when he isolates a fullback, rocks him side to side, and then delivers from an angle that looks geometrically impossible. And here's something that makes this comparison more than just surface level observation. Yamal has openly said that Neymar is his idol, one of the first players he watched obsessively as a kid, the player he studied, the player he wanted to be. So the influence isn't accidental, it's conscious, it's in there. But, and this is the interesting part, there's a difference between Neymar's flair and Yamal's flair. Neymar's brilliance was often about beauty, the skill, the expression, the performance itself almost felt like the point. Yamal's creativity is increasingly about damage. He isn't doing tricks to entertain you, he's doing them because they lead to goals, to assists, to moments that hurt the opposition. There's an edge to it, a coldness underneath the magic. It's the difference between an artist who wants you to appreciate the brushstroke and one who just wants the painting finished. Okay, this is where the story gets really good. When Cristiano Ronaldo rocked up to Manchester United in August 2003, he wasn't the finished article. He was 18 years old, and his debut against Bolton became famous not because he scored, he didn't, but because of the warning he issued, the fearlessness. "This stadium belongs to me now" energy radiating from a teenager who had absolutely no right to feel that comfortable yet. That early Ronaldo was direct, brave. He took defenders on again and again. He made bad decisions sometimes. He lost the ball. He tried things that didn't work. And then, almost immediately, he asked the ball back and tried again. That's the mentality. That specific, slightly unreasonable stubbornness. The give me the ball again attitude. The willingness to look foolish for 2 minutes if it means something magical happens on minute 3. The belief, not hope, belief that the next action is going to work even when the last one didn't. Watch Yamal, that's exactly what you see. Not a copy of Ronaldo, not the same player, but the same psychological makeup, the same audacity, that rare teenage confidence that isn't normal, isn't taught, and can't be faked. So if you're really trying to map these 3 comparisons onto what Yamal actually is, it looks something like this. Messi was inevitability, the quiet genius slowly revealing himself. Neymar was flair, the artist with chaos stitched into his boots. Young Ronaldo was raw force plus belief, a winger who willed himself into spaces that shouldn't have existed. And Yamal feels closest to that third path, even though nobody wants to say it, because he isn't just talented, he's audacious. And audacity at this level, at this age, is the rarest thing in football. Now, let's zoom out. Because when you look at the timeline of genuinely great teenage players, a pattern emerges that's hard to ignore. Ronaldo debuted for Manchester United at 18. It took him a few seasons to evolve from brilliant entertainer to the Ballon d'Or winning machine we know now, but the foundation was laid early and the trajectory was always pointing upwards. Messi debuted at 17, scored his first official goal at 17, and was gradually introduced to the world as this quiet, inevitable genius unfolding in front of everyone. Then came Neymar, who debuted at 17 for Santos. The world-class player was always visible, but his true top 3 on the planet era came once he hit the biggest European stages and the prime years clicked into place. And then there's Mbappe, the modern reference point for what accelerated teenage greatness looks like. A teenager who didn't just show up on the biggest stage, he won on it. World Cup winner at 19, scored in the final, took the Young Player of the Tournament award, the blueprint at its most dramatic. Now look at Yamal's runway against all of that. By 16, he's not a prospect, he's a European champion. At Euro 2024, he led the tournament in assists with 4, led the tournament in completed dribbles with 32, clocked a top speed of 33.3 kilometers per hour, and won Young Player of the Tournament at 16. By 17, he's scoring in a Champions League semi-final against Inter Milan, not as a passenger, not as a cameo, but as the spark that drags Barcelona back into the tie. By 18, the global panel has placed him second in the Ballon d'Or voting. Let that sit for a second. Second in the Ballon d'Or at 18. The football world isn't talking about Yamal as a future contender, they're already treating him like he belongs in the room right now. So when you ask the question that nobody really wants to ask too loudly, if this is what 18 looks like, what does 22 look like? That's not hype talking, that's the blueprint repeating itself just like it did with Messi, Neymar, Ronaldo and Mbappe before him. Teenage greatness becoming prime age dominance. And suddenly, Cristiano Ronaldo's warning takes on a slightly different weight. Maybe he wasn't just warning the world about pressure and expectations. Maybe, just maybe, he was warning us about what happens when a talent like this is actually allowed to grow properly, without the noise, without the weight of the world on his shoulders before he's ready for it. What that produces might be something we've genuinely never seen before.
This is where the story stops being comfortable. Talent is easy to celebrate. You watch the clips, shake your head, say unbelievable and move on. But the Ballon d'Or,
That's built on something harder, decisive moments, trophies, the ability to show up when the stakes are so high that most people would rather disappear. So, what does the award actually reward? UEFA's criteria is simple: decisive individual performances, team trophies, and how you carry yourself when the whole world is watching. That's the formula. And we don't need to theorize about how it works, we just watched it play out in front of us. In 2025, Ousmane Dembélé won the Ballon d'Or, the central pillar of his case, leading PSG to their first ever Champions League title. Output matters, brilliance matters, but that trophy, that's the thing that turns a great season into an unforgettable one in voters' minds. Now, here's the detail that changes everything. In that same vote, the one Dembélé won, Lamine Yamal finished second, runner-up for the biggest individual prize in football. At 18 years old, the football world has already stopped treating him like a kid, even if Ronaldo keeps calling him one. But here's the honest part. Two things separate runner-up from winner. The first is a Champions League trophy. Dembélé just proved how transformative that is. If Barcelona go deep this season and Yamal has his fingerprints all over it, the case starts making itself, not because of his age, but because of his impact. And the second is a World Cup narrative. The World Cup does something to Ballon d'Or stories that club football simply can't replicate. Yamal already has Euro 2024, a World Cup run with Spain, delivering in the knockouts, leading from the front, would be the final piece that turns a compelling case into an overwhelming one. Prime years for attackers are the early to late 20s. That's when the body, decision-making, and rhythm all lock together. That's when the great ones become truly unstoppable. Yamal is doing this at 18. So when you genuinely ask, if this is what 18 looks like, what does 22 look like? That's not hype, that's just logic following the evidence wherever it leads. Maybe Ronaldo wasn't warning us about the pressure or the comparisons. Maybe he was warning us about something much bigger. What happens when a talent like this is given the space to grow properly without breaking under the weight of the world's expectations? Because if this is 18, we may be watching the beginning of something we've never quite seen before.